Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all, and Brother Ali. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. Last week was our first week back after an unexpected and unannounced hiatus, and so I wanted to explain why that had happened. And so much love and thank you so much to everybody that listened to that episode and reached out. I noticed that, I've said before, but I don't always notice how people are seeing me, the impression that I'm giving them, because so much about my life is really unique and it's my life, so it all makes sense to me. And then also I move in so many different communities and cultures that I don't always realize how things seem to people. Like I've said all the time, I don't know when women like me. My wife has to tell me that. Oh, she likes you, by the way. You know what I mean? And at first I was like, no. And but man, her instincts and her read of things is nearly undefeated. I just say undefeated. She's almost always right. So yeah, I a lot of times I don't realize the perception maybe that I'm giving or that people may have. So a lot of people reached out to me after the last episode of the podcast, and then they were saying, do we need to start a GoFundMe? Can you give me a Venmo or something? I want to send you some money. And so I just want to start by saying, I'm okay. My family is not broke. Alhamdulillah. We're not rich either, but I mean, we're making do and it's totally fine. And so you don't need to worry about us. If you want to support us, please do. Somebody said maybe in the YouTube, they was like, hey, Brother Ali's got a website and he sells merch. Let's all go buy his merch. That's a beautiful thing to do. Always with independent artists, the best thing to do is to go to their websites, to look them up, find out, do they sell their things directly? Because that's the way to benefit us the best. We also have a caravan that you can subscribe to. Different levels. That's also a beautiful way to support what we do, to go to the shows and things like that. But I realized that I was describing a tour that was not profitable. I was also describing a very real scenario where money was taken out of my Turkish bank account was emptied. I mean, the beautiful thing about the last 4 or 5 years now of my career is that I own my own label. I run my own operations. There's more opportunities for the money that comes in to actually be at my disposal. I've got multiple streams now. And so even when something goes really off track, me and my family are not broke. And so thank you very much for caring in that way. We can pay our bills. So alhamdulillah, we're very, very grateful for that. And we're grateful to the people that care. We're brought to you this podcast from day one by the Zakat Foundation. Zakat Foundation is a very real global humanitarian organization that does really good work. They feel like the equivalent of an independent record label, where it's not like a huge, they're not a shoestring operation. Like I'm not performing for 30 people at my local coffee shop. I'm not on a big label. I'm doing my own thing and we're working it out. And it is happening. And that's how I see Zakat Foundation. It's not a huge $1 billion, they don't run it like a huge corporation, but they also are able to do a lot. And so we're very grateful to be connected with Zakat Foundation. Zakat.org is their website, ZAKAT. And you can also go to Zakat US on social media and see the things that they're doing. All right, I don't know if you could hear those sirens in the background, but there were sirens for a minute, which is rare. Even in a city as big and densely populated as Istanbul. And me and my family actually live right by a police station. And you almost never hear sirens. The police presence is just not felt. The police here are just not what it is in America at all. So I want to mention that. Another thing that I want to mention is that, now there's going to be sirens again. Another thing I want to mention is that we've got shows coming up. I will be in St. Paul, Minnesota, doing an event called the Get Down on the 23rd of August. The 22nd of August. And then on the 24th, I'll be in Madison, inshallah. So the last tour that I did was the Satisfied Soul Tour. That was like a U.S. tour that we did in 2 parts. For the first half of that tour, Ant, who produced Satisfied Soul, and also most of the music that people know me for, he actually came out as the DJ for that tour, which was really extremely dope. But he couldn't do the whole tour. He has a very busy schedule with Atmosphere, so he couldn't do the whole thing. We couldn't do every city on that tour. So we mostly did the west half of the country and a few Midwest dates. Because I'm you know, getting Ant to come out on tour is probably a once in a lifetime thing. So I said, all right, I'm going to go to the places that where the people still come out in the biggest numbers and where it's most reliable. So that's the West Coast. It's that way for everybody, especially in underground rap and underground hip hop. Those are our most reliable markets, from Denver over to LA, and as far north as, Montana, and as far south as, southern Cali, and all through Arizona. There's just something about the West half of the country, like I said, from Denver over, where people still really have a culture of going to shows, even though we're not in our 20s anymore. Whereas in the Midwest, in the South, and on the East Coast, it's not necessarily like that. But I wanted to go to all those places. And so we booked a second leg of the tour, and DJ Abilities, world famous, legendary, champion DJ Abilities, came out and did that with us. And it was really fresh, really, really beautiful. So we did parts of the South, we did the East Coast. But when I did both versions of the show in Minneapolis, and people seemed to really dig it. Because I'm like, okay, you shouldn't really go to the same cities on the same tour, even if they're slightly different shows. But I did Minneapolis. People were really happy to go to both because it's a different show. It's a different version of the set. And so I said, okay. Then we booked this thing in St. Paul, which is like, it's, like it's a public art foundation kind of thing that puts it on. And so my booking agent was like, hey, I know you don't like to fly back to America just for one show. Let's see if any of the markets in the area want to bring you out. And Madison said, hey, we want the DJ Abilities version. Madison is where I was born. And so on the 24th of August, we're going to do Madison. Again, we did it with Ant, and now we're going to go back and do it with DJ Abilities. And my dear beloved friend Mally, one of the greatest from the Twin Cities, is going to come and play with us. So on the 24th of August, which is coming up soon, I'll be back in Madison, back at the Majestic Theater with DJ Abilities. It'll be a different show. Please come out to that. BrotherAli.com is where you get all of the tickets and information. Now, I just got invited to do it again in Chicago. And I'm thinking about taking it. So Chicago has a new venue that I wasn't aware of. And they just made an offer like, hey, bring the second, like the DJ Abilities version to Chicago. Is that something y'all want to see? Let me know in the comments. Because I think I'm probably going to go back and do it in Chicago again. And so that's dope. So we got things coming up. Also, I will be in, I believe it's Oslo and Stockholm this fall. Those will just be me, by myself. I've been doing European shows by myself, me and my computer. I make the set myself every day. I travel by myself. There's something really beautiful about that. When the shows are going to be small and intimate like that, there's something really dope about jumping on stage by myself with my computer and rocking the set, just me and the audience. And so I don't know if those are on BrotherAli.com yet. Let me check and see what's up with that. And let me also turn my doggone sound down. Word. So I'm really just getting back in the habit of doing the podcast again. And, we didn't do it for a while. And so I have some guests lined up, and there's some people that I want to talk to, and I probably will record some before I head out and go to St. Paul and Madison. But I wanted to spend a few weeks just kicking it with you and just talking with you. One of the things that I noticed when I told the story, all together about what had happened over the past several months and how things have been going and some of the challenges that we've been facing, I realized that, because I'm living this stuff, people don't know. I see it all together, and a lot of times people don't always realize the kind of zoomed out version of the stories and the things that we're doing. And so it's helpful to have this platform to be able to come back and tell my story. They say it's really important to share your stories with people. And so one of the things that's just really been sitting on my heart that I want to go back and talk about again is the Love and Service album. So I released 2 albums within a year of each other. And that's something very rare for me. 2 full length, fully produced, full-length albums. Not an album and an EP, but like 2 complete albums that each have their own sound, that each have their own story, that each have their own feel, that are each like their own body of work that are really important to me. The Satisfied Soul album, alhamdulillah, it seems like that was really well received. On Spotify alone, it's got over 2 million streams. It's been out for like maybe 6 months or something like that. Probably not even that long. And it's just been beautiful. And people have received it like a new album, like a major project in my career, which I'm really grateful for. But the reality is that less than a year before that, or prior to that, we put out the Love and Service album. And the Love and Service album, for a lot of reasons, I feel like it just kind of got missed. I feel like only a select group of listeners really were present for that album for a lot of reasons. So I'd like to go back and just talk about it. I want a chance to be able to, because I feel like this album hasn't really been heard. And it was a very strange time and a very unique kind of set of circumstances under which it came out. And so I think there's a lot of people that just didn't get a chance to hear it and maybe don't understand or don't really fully comprehend like what that really means, both as an album and also as a chapter in my career. So the way that this album came about was that in the summer of 2000, I made the decision to step away from Rhymesayers, to step away from the Twin Cities community and from America. And my family and I moved to Istanbul. And we moved during the pandemic. The circumstances around that were that there was this cancel culture happening in the Twin Cities scene. There also was the police murdered George Floyd in cold blood in front of everybody on camera. And there was an uprising, and a lot of the city was in flames, and those things were happening. And then also I was having the challenges and difficulty with the Rhymesayers label, who are all people that I love. They're beautiful human beings that have given their life to making sure that artists like me have a chance to have a platform and get a chance to be heard. And so all of those things were deeply troubling and very, very difficult. They were really heartbreaking kind of realities in my life. The George Floyd thing was dealing with race and racism and community organizing and the uprising and everything. Those are all things that I've dedicated my life to. Those are key foundational themes of my life. And then also the situation with the label was like, these are some of the closest people to me, but it wasn't working for me business wise. And I couldn't see a way to grow in the ways that I wanted to and to feel good about what I was doing. And so I made this decision to step away. Heartbreaking. I had to mourn it and grieve it. It was really very difficult. And it was a tough decision to make. And then also rebuilding a business when I had built my career in the team that if you're in underground independent hip hop music, like that's the team that you want. And so that was not, an easy decision to make. And then also the Twin Cities music community, hip hop community was having this situation where people were really disavowing each other, canceling each other, surrounding these issues and stuff. So it was a very challenging time. And so some people that I knew in Istanbul, my wife had traveled to Istanbul a few times, or she actually studied Islam in Istanbul. And she came back, I had never been, and she said, that's a city that's a very special city. And she said that me specifically, I should live here. And so I figured, okay, I started visiting because, like I said, her instincts are ironclad, undefeated. And so if she felt that way, it's like, all right, bismillah. So we thought that we would probably come later in our lives, like after all the kids were up and out of the house or something. Maybe this is where we would retire, maybe where this would be we know some old school Muslim pioneers, elders that did that. So Harun Sugic, a dear friend of mine, a mentor, I would say he's a mentor, an elder, a pioneer. Harun Sugic is a really incredible man. Maybe I hope to have him on the podcast. He's an author. He's a writer. he wrote a book called Signs on the Horizons, which is about his meetings with these saintly illuminated people that the Islamic tradition produces around the world. And he sought them out throughout his life. Like his life work has really been, and just really his kind of time in Islam has been about, how do I meet these people? Like there's the, they're spoken about in the Quran, the awliya, the close beloved associates of God, like special people that have special relationships with God, that he becomes the eyes with which they see, the ear with which they hear. And then there's hadith qudsi, which are special sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, where he actually relates things that Allah said to him, but they're not in the Quran. And so some of them are about this group of people called the awliya. And a wali means a protector, but also a close friend. So a person isn't protecting God, but they're protecting the rights of Allah in every moment, even in their own lives. And these are really special people. So he wrote a book called Signs on the Horizons. So these are from the 70s until now. He's traveled the world in search of these people. So when I first met our Uncle Harun Sugich, we call him Harun Baba, Michael Sugich, when I first met him, he had just published this book. And I said to him at our first meeting, please consider doing an audio version of this book because, I'm partially blind. I can't just pick up a book and read it. Now, I've still read a lot of this book because I can read for a certain period before I start getting headaches. And I was so enraptured by this subject. And because I know him, that I would read as much of it as I could. But at that time, this is maybe 7 years ago, he started recording it. I think he started recording it during the pandemic. But he said, okay, I'm going to do this book and I'm going to dedicate it to you, the audio book. And I actually talked him through how to set a room up to be able to record at home. And so he recorded it, and it just came out maybe a week or two ago. It's called Signs on the Horizons. And he actually dedicates the book to me, which is really beautiful. If you get a chance, please check that book out. It's on Audible and all the other streaming services. So he was one. There was another man named Shems Friedlander, who the two of them actually, I wouldn't say they're retired, but I mean they were in that phase of life. Shems Baba actually passed away since we moved to Istanbul. I was very blessed to attend his janazah. And his son is a really dear friend of mine. So these are people that live in our community. So me and my wife thought, well, like maybe at that kind of, in the winter of our lives, we'll move to Istanbul because it seems to be like a fly thing to do. But then during the pandemic, somebody that lived here said, why don't you come for a year and ride out the pandemic? There was a group of people at that time that were coming to study with Sheikh named Mukhtar El-Marghawi, who I believe he's Algerian, but a really incredible man. And there were people that were coming. They set up a program where you could come for a year and basically take a year out, even as like adults with families. You bring your family for a year and you do intensive Islamic studies and you live with the sheikh for a year. And it's a good way to have like a reset and a rededication to the spiritual path, the Islamic tradition, the Arabic language, all of that. So there was a setup for that to happen. And we said, yeah, let's do it. So rented out our house in Minneapolis. We did it pretty quickly, honestly. Like from the time we made the decision, I think we left within a month. And, also at that time, it was less expensive to live in Istanbul. That's no longer true. Like now Istanbul is as expensive as America. It really is that. Like it's really a trip. So in any case, we moved to Istanbul and we thought we'd be here for a year. By the time we got here, it's so expensive and so difficult to get set up here. And just to leave America is such a big thing psychologically, spiritually, logistically. To get out of America, it's like, no, we're not going back, And you've heard about the struggles of staying in Istanbul. Even if we aren't able to stay here, we're not trying to go back to America. I go back to America a lot for work. My wife's clients are in America, but we're not trying to go back. Maybe at some stage in life, I don't know. But right now, it's like, man, we got out. We're not trying to go back. So we get to Istanbul. And I think it took us 2 weeks to find and move into our apartment. We had an Airbnb for 2 weeks. one of the first days that I was in my apartment in Istanbul, the apartment was completely empty. We bought beds from IKEA. I mean, we were broke when we moved here too. So like we put beds for our family on a credit card, and it's like hopefully we can figure out some sort of way to have some money rolling in. But yeah, man, it was a trip. What a crazy time that was. And so I'm with my daughters. You know, they wake up really early. I'm a morning person. The little ones, the two little ones. So I'm in their room, sitting on the floor, and I'm scrolling through Instagram. They're playing, and I come across a new song by Paris, who's like this legendary, very revolutionary hip hop artist, and it's an animated video. And he credited the guy Unjust who animated the video. So I start looking at Unjust page. I'm hearing all these like very weird sounding lo-fi beats, and there are all these animated videos that went along with them. And I'm like, yo, this is ill. And I look, and like, we've got a bunch of the same friends. I discover he's in the Bay Area. He's with Hieroglyphics. And so I reach out to this dude, and I'm like, yo, man, your work is amazing. Like it just had such a unique, distinctive sound, feel, vibe. It felt very handmade. It felt very, it felt like you were going to the farmer's market, where like, man, I think I mentioned on the last podcast, we buy stuff from street markets and things like that. And a lot of times the spinach is not clean and bagged. You got to wash it. There might be bugs on it. But like if you clean it up, it's good. And this stuff is raised by you. You meet the farmer that brought this stuff into the city every Friday, like that type of vibe. And the beats I discovered that he was like, yeah, man, I've been in this period where I'm sampling, instead of going and getting records at the record store, because you can't always go out. He said, I found this whole collection of informational films that were made in the 70s to be played for children, but a lot of times the session players that they made unique music for that stuff. They made special music just for those projects, and those session players are dope. So he said, man, I've been sampling these old like informational, educational films for children from the 70s and 80s, and he was sampling them into the ASR 10, and man, they sounded like that. They didn't sound polished, but every single beat that he sent me, and he had hundreds of beats, they all had a feeling they all made me feel something, and they were all really unique. And he was doing something with them that isn't what I would have done and isn't what most producers would have done. And they also had this really grimy, lo-fi kind of sound to them. And so he said, man, I've always been a big fan of yours. Would you want to do a project together? This is after I just reached out once. I think I sent him a voice note on the DMs in Instagram. And I said, yeah, because you say that a lot. A lot of people talk like that. There's a bunch of people that I've said I'm going to make an album with. I want to do them all. I've been saying that for years with Crisis. I've been saying that, I want to do a project with. There's all these people, rappers, all these projects I want to do. I want to do a project with Stolen Drums from Atlanta. I want to do a project with Exile. I want to do I would love for me and Blue and Exile to do a project together. I want to do a project with all kind of people, And we talk about it. Me and Mike Eagle one time talked about making a super group with Homeboy Sandman, and it's dope. Yes, you want to do them. Most of the time you don't, because it would be a completely new endeavor, an undertaking. That would be, you got to figure it out. It takes a lot of time, and most of us just honestly don't even have the time financially to do that, to be able to set that time aside. But, so it's my first, just got to Istanbul, and he says, do you want to do a project together? I said, yeah, but I can't even think about that. He said, okay, how long do you need? I said, give me a month. Let me get settled into my new place. Give me a month. And he said, okay, cool. A month later, he sent me 30 beats. He said, I made these for you. I made a beat every single day just for Brother Ali, and this is the folder. Sent me a Dropbox folder. And I'm listening to them like, these are dope. These are crazy, beautiful. So, and I had just gotten the studio office that I'm recording from now. It's just an office space and in an office building. And the buildings here are usually the ones that are not brand new. It's just a big concrete construction. Like these are concrete blocks, basically. And so I had some guys come in and build a makeshift kind of booth, vocal booth. It's just two walls coming out of one of the corners. And then I bought a bunch of soundproofing stuff and I just layered it thick up in there. But it works just fine. You've heard it. Like that's where I recorded Satisfied Soul and all this stuff. Sounds great. Sounds just fine. Especially the way studio engineers are now. People record at home. So they're used to that. So, man, I said, all right, let me jump in the booth and just try one of these. And we did a song. The first song we did was called Howlin' Wolf. I said, I rock and moan like the Howlin' Wolf. I was thinking Howlin' Wolf, the blues artist. Because I was going through a lot of traumatic, emotional stuff. And my man, Dr. Resma Menakem, was like, when you're grieving, he's like, cry, man. And he said, rock and moan. And I say that also in Sing Myself Whole. I rocked and moaned. Like, man, it's a very important, good thing to do, to rock back and forth with your body and to moan. And there are certain Sufi groups that have practices like that. Not everybody agrees on them or likes them, but man, there is something very, there's something very cathartic and healing about when you're crying to rock back and forth and to moan and to get it out. And so, and I started doing these songs with Unjust as a way to heal from all the stuff that I was going through and like to soothe myself. It was really about that. Most of the songs I didn't sit down and write. I only sat down and wrote one of the songs. But that was the title track called Love and Service. So it's got a very unique sound. And I sent just the vocals for the first one that I did, and he went in and kind of mixed it and he made it bump, and he was kind of trying to clean it up and make it sound. And I said, nah, man, I love the fact that these are lo-fi. And so I said, man, let them sound like what they sound like. And we're going to have somebody mix the record and make it, to make it sound palatable. But like, let's leave it sounding like what came out of your ASR-10. The ASR-10 is this beautiful machine from the 90s. RZA uses it. Kanye uses it. Ant uses it. Alchemist and Evidence go back and forth between old school. I think they're using older MPCs. The newer MPCs are just almost like a DAW, like a digital audio thing. But the older MPCs have an actual sound and feel to them. And so those two guys go back and forth between the two. Jake One uses the ASR-10. Ant uses the ASR-10. I mean, it's got an automatic feel to it. Like, man, if you sample vinyl, a real vinyl record, into an ASR-10, and then there's a thing that just a button you hit that boosts the sound, it's just got this thick, lavish, lush, velvety, like warm sound to it. It automatically sounds beautiful, especially if you're sampling like soul records or like 70s music into this machine. I'm telling you, if you want your beats to just, you gotta start out having a sound, and the ASR-10 does that. I actually brought my ASR-10 with me when I moved to Turkey. I had to have a special case made for it, and I brought my ASR-10 all the way here, but the power is different, and I haven't found a converter yet that I trust enough. I have not even turned the ASR-10 on. It's coming up in October. It'll be 5 years. I haven't even turned it on. I feel a little bit silly. I probably should have just gave it to Ant or something. But man, anyway, this machine is beautiful, and I love the way it sounds. And I was like, do not change it. So we made this whole album, and it's one of the things that I think made it less palatable, because what I discovered really thinking back on it is like Rhymesayers is one of the, it's almost like what's that label? Hitsville, USA in Motown. It's almost like what Motown was to black music in the 60s, where like you had all this black music coming out on labels like Stax and others. And Motown basically cleaned up the sound and made it sound bigger and made it sound more palatable for a mainstream audience, even though it's still very authentically black music. Prior to that, black music was only sold and played for black audiences. And so that's why you had people like Pat Boone and Elvis that would just re-record black songs, and now it's no longer, and they called it race music. And so they would, Pat Boone, Elvis Presley would re-record black songs, and suddenly they're mainstream, and you could sell them to white people. One of the big successes of Motown was like, if we make this sound, bigger and more polished, then it'll be palatable to more people, and they'll actually listen to black artists. And that's part of, I don't think it was intentional, but that's part of what Rhymesayers ended up doing is, taking this basement music to Joe Mabbitt, the producer, and making it sound big and making it sound polished and making it sound, and they developed its own sound. Like Joe Mabbitt basically has his own sound. The music was being made similarly to a lot of the even like Kanye West and Just Blaze and those kind of producers that were producing for Dipset and Rockefeller and 50 and all those kind of artists. So it wasn't quite that, but it was its own thing that was really dope. But there was a bigness to it. There was a stereo. It felt like you took this to a studio, but it felt like basement music that was being polished up in a studio, much like Motown. Whereas like I've realized I put 2 lo-fi records out, and I just realized that audience, a lot of the audience didn't respond to those. I did one called Secrets and Escapes with Evidence that was a similar kind of vibe and feel. And so yeah, I think that was part of why this album didn't speak to people so directly. But I want to just kind of talk through the track list and like what these songs mean. So the first one is called Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is just really an introduction, but man, the beat is so dope. And I'll tell you what it is. I sampled an audiobook version of Imam al-Ghazali is like one of the great, he's a great Islamic jurist and theologian, but he also is considered to be, so like halfway through the Islamic tradition, like, the Islamic tradition has been around for 1,400 years. About halfway through, you have these kind of 2 major theologian scholars who had differing versions and visions of what the Islamic tradition should be. One of them, and they're both great. One of them is Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, his kind of intellectual, the people that claim his intellectual lineage ended up becoming, I hope I don't say this impolitely, but like the Salafi movement, which then traced their lineage to Saudi Arabia, to Najd, to Ibn Saud, and to people that came in that time. So scholars like Uthaymin, Bin Baz, Albani, and then on into modern times. So that's a certain, like what became very popular in Saudi Arabia, that is a vision and version of Islam. And, they were considered to be like anti-Sufism. But then the other strand of Islam is Imam al-Ghazali, who most of what they would call neo-traditionalists, so people who still believe in more of a pluralism in Islamic thought, theology, practice, and that also includes, so those would be like the 4 madhabs or the 4 schools of Islamic practice, different, that basically come to different conclusions, but they respect that because of the ways of approaching the Islamic tradition and the sources, there are multiple ways of trying to create and maintain a coherent, cohesive, comprehensive approach. That there may be different approaches that are valid, and so there are going to be different rulings and understandings and practices that are also equally valid. And so there's going to be more of a plurality there. And they also are people who have the understanding that there are different theological schools. So like the Maturidi school, the Ash'ari school, and then the corrective tradition that comes largely in Spain and Turkey later on. So they talk about theology in ways that the descendants of Ibn Taymiyyah weren't comfortable talking about theology. Man, I'm really off on a tangent, but in any case, so yeah, and so also the people, so neo-traditionalists that are looking at like a traditional approach to Islam, like a global tradition, and they also would be more affirming of the idea that tasawwuf or Sufism is a part of Islam, so that theology, practice, and spirituality, that Sufism is the spirituality of Islam. Whereas Ibn Taymiyyah and then his like kind of intellectual descendants and inheritors were very critical and skeptical of a whole type of science called tasawwuf or Sufism that would deal with some of these realities and some of the practices. And of course, these are I'm painting with very broad strokes here. So I always hit a tangent, but I always bring it back. So I just say all that to say that Imam al-Ghazali has a text called The Alchemy of Happiness. So he basically wrote an encyclopedia of Islam called Ihya Ulumuddin, which means the revival of the Islamic sciences. And it's one of the greatest works in the history of Islam, especially from the perspective of the kind of section of the Muslim world that about halfway through the tradition really gravitated towards his understanding and his vision and version and expression and practice of Islam. So he wrote the Ihya Ulumuddin, but then he wrote something that's in Arabic. He wrote one in Persian called The Alchemy of Happiness, where he basically is talking about what is the purpose of life? How is a person's soul actually to find? And it's amazing, and it also is something of an encyclopedia. There's an English translation of it that's available, where they didn't just translate it; they also like compiled sections of it. So it's compiled, it's edited, things like that. I really love The Alchemy of Happiness. There's a section there about women in marriage that did not age well, and I don't like it. And I think that it's important to remember he was writing at a certain time for a certain audience. Also, that's the version that we have now in English has been edited by English speakers and even by people who weren't Muslim. And so a lot of times in their translation, their biases show up. And so sometimes I'm even hesitant to recommend that, because when modern people read that, I mean, even when I read it, it's like, oh, this is not cool. And I don't know, honestly, how much of that is just, we believe that the Muslims believe that the prophets are infallible and nobody else is. And so it's just understood that people are just going to have things that they're wrong about. Even the greatest people who live after the prophets, but then also they're going to be products to a certain extent. Usually you'll find in their outlook, there'll be something about them where they're a product of their time, of their society, of the audience they're speaking to, etc. So that's one section of that text that I don't love. The whole rest of the text I love, though. And it's tough because I don't like even recommending it to people. And I so avoid that section. Like when I reread it, I just know that I don't read that part. And I hadn't read it in a long time. And I mentioned it to a young woman one time who was really interested in Islam. And I don't know, I think that might have even turned her off, which is really unfortunate, because it's like that's not the way that any of our other teachers talk about marriage and relating to women and things like that. Yeah, it's almost like doesn't match. It doesn't match like what I've understood and what my teachers have understood about the Islamic tradition. So in any case, The Alchemy of Happiness. So I sampled some sections from the audiobook, one of the audiobook versions of The Alchemy of Happiness. And it is a really dope, amazing poet named Rakaya who came in, Esme from the UK, that came in. And she just happened to be in Istanbul. And her voice is so amazing. I said, hey, would you come and just record your voice for my album? And so she's speaking on that. So then we get track number 2 is a song called Ottomans. Ottomans, I actually spit that song a cappella on a platform called Chinatown Sound, where you go to Chinatown and you spit an a cappella, and they record it in this really dope cinematic way. And it got, tens of thousands it's like semi-viral. But man, that beat, and then we made so one of the things to know about this album is not only is it an amazing album produced entirely by Unjust, another part of that whole scenario is that Unjust was living in the Bay Area working with Hyro for like 15 years. But he's originally from Yellow Springs, Ohio. I had been in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is a place that I went as almost like on a spiritual like journey, which is really what led me here to Istanbul. Like that spiritual journey that led me first to the Bay Area, it was people from the Bay that invited me to Istanbul. And so it's all connected, like sometimes you have to go somewhere to pursue a new lease on life or a new outlook on life. I don't think there's anything whack about that or corny about that. So I initially went to the Bay Area, and me and Ant actually reconnected in the Bay Area because he had a similar experience. But right before making these big leaps in my life, Dave Chappelle was in Yellow Springs doing something called Chappelle Camp 2020, and he actually he invited me to go there, and I spent a week there. And in one of the lowest periods of my life, it really was one of the most validating experiences of my life. Exactly when I needed it, it made me feel like, okay, I don't have to. I am worthy of existing outside of the context that I built my career in. Whether that's in the business sense, in the community sense, in all of I am worthy to exist outside of that. And it really gave me the courage and confidence to have this whole new phase of my life. And I really can't thank Dave and the people around him enough for that. Mo Amer was a big part of that. Yassine Bey was a big part of that. Azhar Usman was a part of that. Amir Suleiman was part of that. Michelle Wolf was part of that, the comedian. My friend Michelle Wolf, I love Michelle Wolf beyond words. I hope she'll come on the podcast sometimes. But she just works so hard that I'm just like, man, I don't even want to disturb her. She's one of the hardest working, realist artists I have ever known. And she's my favorite comedian. So ill. And I actually just saw her in England, in London. But so many people were part of that, and it was a really important thing. And so Unjust just so happened to be leaving the Bay and coming back to Yellow Springs. So there was also that connection. And so, he also, along with producing this album, made animated, illustrated videos for a lot of the songs. And he's told me, again, that he's still committed to doing every single song on the album. So the album will be something that you can watch as a film. But these videos he made are incredible. The song Ottomans actually has 2 videos. So there's an illustrated animated video that he made for Ottomans. And then there's also a live action one that my man JJ did, where he's just following me around like a day in the life of me in Istanbul. So it starts out in my neighborhood. I go to the mosque in my neighborhood. I go to a neighborhood called Kadıköy that I love, where there's like record shops, coffee shops, all that kind of stuff. And then I go to the European side of Istanbul's, and so yeah, it's dope, man. But Ottomans is one of my favorite songs I've ever made. I would need to start performing it in the set. So that's track number 2. 13 songs on this album. I'm just going to talk you through each one. Then the next, track number 3, is a song called Awaken. Never told anybody this. I'm still not going to say it. But there's a classic rock song called I just can't snitch on my own inspirations. There's a classic rock song that I based the chorus of this on. Now, one of my great teachers, one of my personal sheikhs, is a man by the name of Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah. And he loves this. It's a song that he grew up with. And I know that he loves it. And so I fell in love with it. And so the idea of awaken, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said the human being is asleep and when they die, they wake up. So the idea is to die before you die. And you basically awaken to the fact that the material world is temporary. The world of meaning is what's permanent. And everything in the material world, including our bodies, is decaying and will eventually die. It had a start, it had an end, and in between points it changes and it will eventually die. And so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, suicide is a suicide to not die before you die. I love that song. It's another one that I just absolutely love. And so that song is really about the reality that this life is temporary and the life of meaning is the one that's permanent. And that's the world where we never die. The next one is The Collapse. And there also, there's a video for Awaken, right? I think. Is there a video for Awaken? Man, I haven't revisited these in so long. The fourth song is called The Collapse. And The Collapse is a song that we almost weren't going to do. It's the last song that we did. We initially was going to be 12 songs on this album. We initially were going to do 10. We were going to do, Illmatic is 10 songs. Just pick the most perfect 10 songs. And so, but we got done with the album and we had, what did we end up with? 13. So we had 12 songs. One is kind of an intro, one's kind of an outro. So it was like, 10 songs with an intro and an outro, 12 joints. But as we finished this album, October 7th happened. We kind of knew from just talking, and like me and Unjust became lifelong dear brothers and friends. Like that will be my friend and brother for life now. Very deep bonding because of the music that we were making together, what we were going through. I have built so much with people over voice notes, and that's what we did. Like we sent each other voice notes and just became dear friends. And like I love this guy. Like I love this man. Like part of me, he's like one of my foundational friendships. And I think I've only hugged him in real life 2 times, 3 times, but we've become so close to the point where like I've never met his wife, he's never met mine. They both know about us, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like we're very dear friends. So Jess and his wife are both Jewish, and they're anti-Zionist Jews, which is a dangerous thing to be. Like your community will ostracize you for that. And so October 7th happened and we're getting ready to release this album. And his wife was like, you guys need to make a song about what's going on. Now, around that time, my dear friend, my brother Yassine Bey, did an interview. In the interview, he's asked about Drake. She said, is Drake hip hop to you? And he's like, because Yassine was making a broader point that hip hop and punk rock are countercultural folk art movements where the people tell the truth about the world of illusions, the empire of illusion that we live in. And they're so necessary spiritually because they give people permission to think outside the empire of illusion. And so he said, there's music that's in the style of hip hop, but spiritually and thematically and message wise, it's not hip hop. So she asked about Drake. And you see Yassine in the interview goes, why are you doing this to me? And he says, no, that's like pop music. He's like, I walked into Target, they were playing, or the mall or something, they were playing Drake, and it went really well with shopping. And he's not saying Drake's whack. He's not saying Drake's not a good person. He's just saying that music it was very compatible with buying stuff and shopping and consuming products. And Yassine told me one time, he said, man, a person gets famous by selling people a lifestyle that they want to have, selling people their aspirations. He said a person becomes rich by being in bed with corporations, by getting people to want to buy things that are tied in with that lifestyle. He said a person, though, becomes beloved by sharing what's really going on in their heart. And he said some people can be all three, but it's usually that there's like fortune and fame. And in those cases, you're selling people a consumer lifestyle. He said that's what it's become. And so he told me, like, you might not be rich and you might not be famous because you're not selling people a lifestyle of consumerism. You're just not doing that. So corporations, you get rich by working with corporations. I mean, that's the reality of it. And you get famous by selling people an aspirational vision for the most part. But he said, but you'll be beloved forever because you really share the journey of what it is to be a human being. Like the journey that your heart is on is what's in your music, is what you talk about. So he's like, you're always going to be beloved, so you'll always be good. Don't worry about it. And don't worry about what you're not. Just be happy and keep being great at what you are. And coming from him, it means so much. It's one of the things that was very validating about being in that situation with the people that I admire the most. That thing in that Chappelle summer camp, I mean, Pharoah Monch is going through there. Black Thought is going through there. These are people that I know and love, Donnell Rollins was there. And, Donnell is a beautiful guy and he's hilarious, especially if you're in the room. Although his special was dope. His special was dope. But like Donnell, it's like if you're in the room with Donnell, you're cracking up. If he's doing stand-up and you're there, it's hilarious. And but he's very raw and very real. And man, the first night I got there, I wasn't planning on doing anything, and Chappelle's performing. And then suddenly, I guess he closed his set by saying, I'm going to give you a sentence you never heard before. There's a white albino Muslim rapper, and he's one of the dopest MCs of all time. Make some noise for Brother Ali. And I'm sitting in the audience. I'm like, yo. So I run up on stage, and his DJ he just goes, he probably just went on Spotify and was like, all right, I'm going to play the top song on Spotify. So he's playing Forrest Whitaker with the vocals. And I'm like, nah, this is not what to do. I said, man, just play Nas and Wu-Tang beats. Just switch them up every 16 bars or something, and I'll follow your lead. So I'm going off the head. I'm spitting verses. I'm just doing my thing. And Donnell and Dave and Kweli and all them are just going crazy. You know what I mean? They're on the side of the stage. They're just going, yo! Like, oh, man, it's one of the greatest feelings. And I just hear Donnell going, I told y'all. And man, so Donnell, I hear him FaceTiming with some of my favorite rappers. And he's like, yo, son, Brother Ali just killed you, son. Brother Ali just killed you. You got to get out here. You can't beat what Brother Ali just did, son. And it was just, very affirming, very, very beautiful. So I'm hearing Yasin give this interview about Drake. And he's not talking about Drake. He's talking about the spirit of hip hop. Now, the viral moment is when the lady asks him about Drake, and Yasin says, why are you doing this to me? Now, mind you, this is before Kendrick launches into his thing. But that moment went viral. You might have seen it. But this is why this like clickbait media culture is so corny and whack, because Yasin was talking about really amazing, important things. But the part where he just said Drake's name, but just because he was asked, he wasn't trying to diss Drake. That's the part that went viral. So, but what he says in that interview is a lot of the music that's being made and released now is not going to prepare people for the empire. The empire is crumbling. He's like, how do you not see the fact that it's collapsing? He's like, the pillars are shaking. And the music is like just basically providing a flashy soundtrack to distract us from the fact that it's all falling apart. And so when Just Wife said, you guys got to do a song about what's going on, I thought about that. And so I made the song called The Collapse, and Just had already given me that beat. That was an older beat. I think he made it before we even started working together. But I always kind of heard this idea in that beat for that chorus. Now the chorus of The Collapse is me singing. A lot of people don't know that. I did except for the guests on this that are rapping, I sang the choruses, I did everything. Yeah, that's me singing. So I initially, when I heard it in my mind, I thought about Merkage Dave. Merkage Dave is a guy from the UK, black brother from the UK. His voice is so dope. No, I'm sorry. The first one I thought about was Bilal the Poet, a Somali brother from Canada. Really dope. I thought about him first. He was in the middle of making his album. He went through some stuff. I don't know him, but we have a lot of mutual friends. And so I tried to reach out to him. It didn't work. I think maybe his brother passed or something, but he was going through something. And I just got the message like, he probably would do this for you, or there's a possibility, but now's not the time. So I said, okay, this album's done and we're about to put it out. I need to get it out. So I reached out to Merkage Dave. And I had the chorus, everyone was dancing while it was all collapsing. The warning lights were flashing. They just found it dazzling. And I'm thinking like, man, Merkage Dave would sound dope singing it. I tried to sing it sound terrible. I sent it to Merkage Dave and he said, yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. This is dope, but I don't just sing. He's like, I write my stuff and it takes me a long time. And that's why I feel so connected to what he does, because it's deep and it's profound, it's emotional, it's well thought out. So it's like, okay, that's not gonna happen. That's not it. So I said, all right, I'm just gonna sing it. But I said, I didn't like how I sounded singing it. So I said, let me try singing it with almost in a British accent, imitating Merkage Dave. So that's what you hear on the song. And I will say that song, and also just me posting about Palestine, is probably another part of why that song or this album didn't really get heard. So I made the Love and Service album at the same time I was making Satisfied Soul. I made both albums simultaneously. And I brought the skeleton of both albums to a digital distributor. Me and BK were in America. I was in America visiting, and we had a meeting with a digital distributor who's really good at working the algorithm, at making sure that stuff ends up on people's radar and on people's playlists. They're very, very good at it. And I've done some work with them. I've worked with them over the years. These are people that hold a very high position of prestige and privilege. They're also connected to the people that book the festivals, concerts, shows in a lot of my biggest touring markets. And I've worked with them as a broader institution for 20 something years. I've worked with these people a long time. They're very, very good at what they do. Played them both albums. They're saying they got goosebumps. We're making plans for them to release both of these albums and to distribute both of these albums. So it's like, all right, dope. We got partners. We got a big partner. These people work on a large level. So we're going to be the label, but we got a distribution partner. We got a schedule. We're talking about budgets, all that stuff. Based on those conversations, me and BK went and hired a very high price. Like, we paid absolute top dollar for the publicist. The publicist is the person that makes sure that your project gets talked about in magazines, on blogs, on podcasts. This is the same person that we worked with that has always, on all my projects, gotten me in Rolling Stone, The Source, Billboard, Double XL. What's that thing called? They're based out of Chicago. It's like the big website. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. It'll come to me. But it's like, that's who you want to rate your album online and to review on Pitchfork. Always got me on there. I mean, everything I've done has been covered by all of these platforms. And so he knows all of them directly. I know a lot of them. We know their names. So we pay, and I mean, this publicist charges a lot. I don't name names. I talk about my experiences. I'm not here to cancel anybody, to diss anybody. Also, they may have a different understanding of how things went. I don't name names, and I don't encourage people to try to look up and find, because you could be wrong. So we went and hired a very high-priced publicist. We also spent a lot of money on manufacturing the vinyl. Because we're thinking we're going to sell. We've got this big distribution partner. We're thinking we're going to sell the copies that we're used to selling. We're going to have the coverage that we're used to having. We got all this video content. We got all this visual content. It's like, man, this is about to be a new Brother Ali release. This is going to be a major release in my career. Poured my heart and soul into it. So then, like I said, the album is done. We got all this stuff happening, and then October 7th happens. And so the kind of trifecta of things, the publicist isn't able to get us a single look, nothing. Like, it's not that we went from Double XL, Billboard, and Rolling Stone to smaller platforms. I'm telling you, nothing, zero. The only platforms that said anything about this album was Chuck D, my big brother, my mentor, has a radio station, has his own radio platform. He played it and talked about it. Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Played The Collapse once. She talked about it. That's really dope. And Babito Garcia had me on his Instagram Live. That was really dope. All three of those, I'm very, very proud of them. I think Dr. Cornel West was saying something about it. But, I mean, those are not big platforms. Those are very well-known people. But, I mean, to have a one play on there where it's kind of like in passing, you know what I mean? There are things, those are allegiances, alliances, partnerships that I'm very grateful for, because all of those are very, very respected, but they're not getting the word out to the point where it's going to move the needle about people knowing that you got a project. So we paid top dollar and got zero results. Zero. Nothing. I'm telling you, nothing. Not a blog, not a nothing. Also, the distributor turned out to be very, very vocal Zionists. I didn't necessarily know that going in. A lot of the music industry are Jewish. I have never conflated Judaism with Zionism. I've always had anti-Zionist friends. I've always had people that, even if they had some connection to Zionism, they didn't necessarily see it that way, and they always supported my voice. A lot of the people that I've worked with are Jewish. Jake One, DJ Abilities, a lot of the people that have my booking agent, a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years. My man Jordan Katz, who was my band leader. A lot of people that have said, your voice deserves to be heard, and the plight of the Palestinians deserves to be, the humanity of the Palestinians should be talked about. And you're doing what you're supposed to do, and we support you musically, business-wise, everything else. So I've never conflated those two. But, yeah, I mean, these folks, were making very, very, very strong pro-Israel, pro-Zionist statements at the same time that we were talking about the Palestinians. And so this distributor, we hadn't signed the contract yet. After we poured all this money into it, after we put all of this into it, they just ghosted us. They just stopped responding to our emails. They just stopped answering us. And so we sunk tens of thousands of our own dollars into this thing, thinking that we had partners, and we got nothing. Also at that time, I was deeply, deeply, deeply shadow banned. I've got 500,000 followers across platforms. 300 people were seeing my posts. It was a very, very, very challenging time. So we put this album out that we love. And I'm thinking at that time, it's like, man, this is fresh into this round of, the Palestinians suffering, this occupation, apartheid, genocide. It's and you have a Muslim MC and a Jewish producer who make an album together called Love and Service, we're thinking this is a plus. But it was nearly impossible to get the word out about this album. So the fourth song is The Claps. The fifth one is called Manic. Manic is a celebration of true barbarian MC, like just the highest level MCing. It's two of my favorite artists in the world in terms of their bars. It's me and Casual, who I believe is the most underrated, underappreciated, true great. Like, he deserves to be in people's top 5. And depending on when you ask me, he's in my top 5, but he's the number one most slept on, underappreciated. Even though he's part of Hieroglyphics, he's very successful. Everybody loves Casual, but like, man, to me, Casual is the West Coast Black Thought. And if you don't know that, it's because of how slept on he is. I mean, so he's just been reposting a lot of the like freestyles that he did, just him killing other people's beats. But like, go to his Instagram and scroll through, and I mean, he is an elite level MC. And then A$AP Rock is on that song too. It's called Manic. And I basically set myself up for a challenge, because not only did I reach out to two of the greatest MCs of all time, and I've wanted to hear them on a track together, but also a lot of where I'm able to kind of edge out other MCs is because, like, yeah, I'm lyrical and I can spit and all that, but like, I work very well with melody and chord progressions. So when the beat is melodic and there's chord progressions, I'm very adept at working with and kind of tugging the heartstrings by the way that I interact and interplay with the melody line. And so I chose a beat with no melody. Like, that beat is just it's just sounds, you know what I mean? I absolutely love that song. I love every single song on this album. To me, I look at this album the way that Jay-Z keeps on talking about Reasonable Doubt. Like, this album to me is a masterpiece. To me, it's like me and Just did exactly what we wanted to do on this album. I'm in love with it. To me, it's like, when fans come up to me and they're like, yo, when listeners, supporters say, yo, Love and Service is my favorite album, it's like, man, it means a lot to me. Manic. Then there's a song called Nam de Plume. It's a short one verse kind of thing. There's a sample on there from my first teacher and leader in Islam, Imam Warathuddin Muhammad. And I just love it. There's times where, I have to admit, there's times where I go into stuff where I'm very inspired, especially in this phase of my career, by Black Thought, because of how, I don't think I need to explain that. So, Black Thought is like, speaking on people like A$AP Rock and Casual, like, there are people who, it's like being dope. There needs to be like a viral moment where everybody sees how dope you are. You know what I mean? So like, Freeway is an underground, incredible spitter like us, but he was blessed to have a few moments with Jay-Z so that everybody saw it and heard it at the same time. That's another part, is like, when you're dope, you might reach certain pockets of people, but you don't really affect the culture or impact the culture all at once, because you never have a moment that becomes viral. And so, Freeway was on Classic Records with Jay-Z at the height of Jay-Z-dom. You know what I'm saying? Black Thought has been dope all these years, and then that Funkmaster Flex thing went mega viral. And so that's when people started recognizing, and it honestly opened up a whole new phase of Black Thought's career. He never did solo joints before that. And if you listen to Black Thought talk, he'll tell you that he always had a type of imposter syndrome and survivor's guilt based on the way he grew up, and he had a self-consciousness, believe it or not. And a lot of us do. And like, would I put myself in a category of Black Thought? Yes and no. He is a superior MC to me by all. But in terms of being an elite MC that never really fully gets your shine, except that you're recognized by your peers, in that sense, I am there with Black Thought. And so there's times where I'll listen to him and I will be like, okay, I have to rap now. Let me find a beat where I can And so Nom de Plume is one of those. Track number 7 is a song called Cadillac. And Cadillac is a story that I've always wanted to tell. I've told it on the podcast about sitting in a car with my first wife's dad. This is in about the year 2000, 2001. And I've told the story on the podcast about, we're coming from the mosque. We stopped because our wives want to go grocery shopping. It's Sunday night. And the police pulled us out of the car at gunpoint, put guns to our head, laid us on the in the parking lot, snowy puddles, and one of the most demeaning, dehumanizing experiences of my life. But experiencing it with my black father-in-law, who's in his 70s, and like for him that was just so normal. And I've always wanted to tell this story. So Unjust sent me this beat, and I'm like, and now mind you, I only wrote the title track is the only one that I sat down and wrote. All the other ones, I just sat with the mic and thought of a few bars at a time and spit them, and thought of a few more and did that and recorded it like that. So the whole rest of this album I wrote as a stream of consciousness thing. And I start telling the story. I've never done a story that way. And so I start telling a very, very important story from my life, but I'm recording it in pieces. And I realized, like, I don't know how to end this story. I have no idea. So I just left it. I recorded, 4/5 of the song, and then I went on tour and everything. Like, it's like, I don't know how to end this. And then while I was on tour, my first father-in-law, my first wife's dad, died of a heart attack. And it's like, oh man, that's how you end the song. So one of the most important stories of my career also is on this album, the song called Cadillac. Number 8 is a song called Gauntlet. And Gauntlet is with one of the most acclaimed MCs of this time, Rock Marciano. And Unjust. So I had traded DMs with Rock Marcy because we have mutual friends and things like that. I don't know if we've ever met in person, but I've just let him know, like, man, I really very deeply respect, admire, revere the way that you've approached making music. What he talks about is like regular street stuff, but he and Ka. So Rock Marcy is the one that now the culture fully appreciates and celebrates, but Ka didn't get that until he died. So people like Doom and Ka and Rock Marcy, Madlib, they really stuck to their guns in the sense that, like, I want to rap, like, I sample things that I already want to rap to. And they don't need to add a bunch of drums and a bass line and, percussion and snares and have a bass player play over it. I'm not doing that. I'm sampling records that are perfect how they are. And I'm gonna rap to them like they are. So the whole no drums thing that some people love, some people really hate, I know a lot of hip hop traditionalists that hate that, and it's tough for them to hear people like Madlib and The Alchemist doing that style of production. I think that Madlib and I mean, Jay Dilla did that too. A lot of great producers have done that, where it's just the sample and there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on. They're not also adding drums to it. And somebody like The Alchemist has done every style of beat almost, so like he's allowed to do whatever he wants. It's a very clearly intentional thing when he's doing it. But yeah, so I just really truly appreciate what Rock Marcy has done in his career and the fact that it worked for him, and he really stuck to his guns, and I admire stuff like that. Same thing with LP and Run the Jewels and certain other people. So yeah, that song called Gauntlet is one that we did with Rock Marcy. And I felt like I was right there. So part of what I did on this album is put myself next to MCs and I'm in their world. And I really felt like I hung with them, and I feel very good about that. So number 9 is Howlin' Wolf. Oh, cool story about Gauntlet. So Unjust, though, he knew Rock Marcy, and he's known him for a long time, and he made videos for him and things like that, and they're actual friends. And so he did it as a favor, but I wanted to, at a certain point, I'm like, I want to give Rock Marcy a gift. And one of the things that Just told me is that when they hung out, like he had to go and buy Gucci sneakers. Gucci sneakers are a few $1,000s. Now, Rock Marcy doing a paid feature is going to cost more than that. You're probably paying $10,000, $15,000. I don't know, 20. I don't know. He can charge whatever he wants. And we're not paying that, but I'm like, I want to give him a gift because he's taking his time out. And it's just a reality that if he's rapping he's really doing it as a favor to Just. But I know he respects me too, which is dope. I sent him messages. He sent me very, very, very kind messages back. You know what I mean? Much respect to what, So I'm like, okay. So I messaged him and I said, look, let me buy you a pair of Gucci sneakers. Just as a gift, you know what I mean? Just as a thank you gift for doing a thing. And then he sent the features, so that's dope. And so I mentioned Gucci sneakers, and I said third world residence visas and Gucci sneakers. Because like at the time, like I'm living in, a not first world country, and giving him a gift to buy some Gucci sneakers. So that's Gauntlet. The next song is Howlin' Wolf, and I mentioned that one. It was the first one that I did. Track 10 is a song called Ghosts. And Ghosts is really about the fact that, so many relationships during that time, during the pandemic time and the time right after, so many people just stopped talking to each other. So many people ghosted each other, and it became like a really common thing during that time. And so I wrote that song about the fact that it feels like a friend that died. It feels very similar to like somebody that that passed away. So that's the way that I wrote that particular song. And I initially wanted Homeboy Sandman to be on it. And I sent it to Homeboy Sandman, and I was like, yo, this is about ghosting people. And he was like, word. Yeah, he's like, I've ghosted people. And so maybe I'm talking about what it feels like to be ghosted. And he said, well, maybe I can talk about why I've ghosted people. And I said, yeah, that'd be dope. Homeboy Sandman is one of the greatest. Oh, man, I love this guy. I think I took him on one of his first tours. But, man, I just love this dude. He's so ill to me. So incredible. He's, again, I feel like Homeboy Sandman and, Billy Woods. So Billy Woods has been recognized. But there's like certain people that came, but Homeboy Sandman and Mike Eagle, Open Mike Eagle, like there's people that came along right at the tail end of our version of the underground. But in our version of the underground, there was a full economy built in where like if you became somebody in our world, you could tour. You know what I'm saying? You could like really have a really strong touring career. And there are people that would just buy everything you did because you were part of that world. And Homeboy Sandman and Open Mike Eagle and those guys, they just kind of came at the tail end of that, and they kind of missed it. So they had to build their own unique thing just as themselves. And Homeboys, and they did, and they're successful, and it's dope. But I always kind of felt like, man, if you came 3 or 4 years earlier, you could have been grandfathered in, kind of, and they wouldn't have had to do the same amount of work that they did. Honestly, they could have just come on tour with, Living Legends, Def Jux, Rhyme Sayers, and they would have been in. But they ended up doing it anyway, so that's dope. But yeah, man, I asked Homeboy Sandman to do it, and he said, yeah. But then I sent him the song, and I think he might have forgot about it or something, but he heard me talking about specifically the apps, like using apps to communicate with people. And he hit me back and was like, yo, I don't have those apps, so I can't really relate. He's very anti-social media and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, don't worry about that. But he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't get it. So he didn't do it. So I reached out, I think actually just reached out to Quelle Chris. And Quelle Chris is somebody else like that, man. I respect him beyond words, like so dope. And so he came through with it almost immediately. And what's fresh too is that the guests on the album, not necessarily A$AP, but the guests that I had on the album, they're not Muslim, and they just straight up don't believe in Islam. But they all said something very favorable about Islam, just out of respect to me and respect for Islam. So Quelle Chris says, I'm not even religious, but I'm praying on both knees. You know, and I think they didn't curse in their record, and like it's yeah, they all said something very respectful of Islam. Or they talked about things in a way that wasn't disrespectful of Islam, which I really appreciate. So yeah, Ghost is about when you lose a friend, it feels like the same as when they die. Okay, now we come to track number 11. Track number 11 is the title track of the album. It's called Love and Service. It's about the phenomenon of communities canceling each other. It's one of the most important songs I've ever written. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written. It is probably the least streamed song in my catalog. I don't know what to do about that. There's a beautiful video for it. I mean, it's like if you really knew me, you would know that that is one of the songs I feel most grateful for in my entire catalog. Love and Service is like, that's what it feels like. That's what it felt like to me to be part of a community where everybody was canceling each other. People were talking about me. I didn't know if I was canceled. It's like, it's just the sadness of being in that situation. And I feel like I wrote exactly what I needed to write. Just gave me exactly the music that I needed. You know, whether I ever do it live or people ever acknowledge it, this project as a whole, but that song specifically, it's like, man, I wrote that song. I cried like a baby. It's like so many other songs in my career where it's like, man, there's got to be a song about this. There had to be Baby Girl. There had to be Dear Black Sun. There had to be The Bitten Apple. There's certain songs where like, this is a really painful subject for me, and I want it out of here. Walking Away, Fahim, Uncle Sam Goddamn. In a weird way, in a weird way, Forrest Whitaker is a song like that, you know? There's certain songs where like, this is something that's a very, very extremely painful song in my life, and I am going to heal and kind of like seal my healing moment. I seal the moment by writing that song. So like, I don't care how anybody feels about it. To me, that is a song that will forever be one of the most important songs I've ever been gifted. I feel like I was gifted that. And it's me documenting one of the most painful things I've ever been through and almost making sense of it and healing from it by writing a song. And I'm so grateful it exists. Number 12 is called Worthy. We're worthy of love. It's meant to be after that song. Like human beings, just based on the fact that we're human, we have a certain worthiness. That Allah says in the Quran, قَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي Adam. I've given a certain, Allah says, the Creator says, I've given a certain nobility to the Bani Adam, the tribe of Adam. The entire human family, no matter what, has a certain worthiness, a certain nobility, just based on the fact that we're worthy of love. The Most High conceived of us and breathed in us. The duty of the dunya is to beat us up. So the champ keeps swinging, the adhan keeps swinging. Man, so grateful for that song. And that beat in particular, I asked Jess when we were making the album, is there anything that I haven't rapped to that you want a song? Like, are there any beats that you feel like have to be on this album? You know, because of the fact that I choose which songs I write to, which beats I write to. So I'm kind of choosing the beats, and I'm choosing what ends up on this. Is there a beat you want on this album? And he pointed that one out. And so I made that song, and that also is one of my, I love this album. I love it beyond words, man. Like this album represents healing to me. This album is like, this is why I make music. I'll say something else about that in a minute. But so then the final song is called Inside. Now, Inside, I wrote based on this idea that, and I'm going to make a podcast episode about this subject in general where I address this, but you know, there are a lot of Muslims, and they're the most vocal group that believe that it is actually forbidden in Islam to perform music with stringed instruments, with winged instruments, wind and stringed instruments. That that music should be avoided, really. And we should only make very few exceptions, few and far between, with drums, with like hand drums only. And just that music in general, they just have this statement where they say music is haram. And so this song is my response to that idea. I mean, so I'll do a podcast episode addressing this very specifically. I don't believe that. At the end of the day, I don't believe that. Many of the Islamic scholars have had a variety of differing views and rulings on that stuff. And it basically is saying there is a healing element to music that can only come through music. And I have healed through music, and this album in particular, this is the story of my heart and my life as I left a major chapter of my life where if all those things happened, if somebody were to tell me in advance, and it's preceded, honestly, that period is preceded by, I was with a religious teacher that I really believed in, and I discovered that there was a whole other side to this person that I could have never believed, that was really in contradiction to what they showed the world. And I had been really deeply invested in platforming this person and promoting them and all this stuff. And I'd gone through an entire emotional, spiritual roller coaster with that. So it's like the entire way that I identified myself for my musical career, my adult life, my professional life, my public life, it kind of all imploded all at once in 2018, 19, 2020, that whole thing. It was like Rhymesayers was my identity. The Twin Cities was my identity. The community activism organizing stuff was my identity. That music scene was my identity. It's even been a big part of my identity that I'm an advocate for women and for especially talking about sexual violence and the fact that that was at the heart of people canceling each other, or at least that conversation. My religious community, my spiritual community, all of that stuff, the outward formations that I existed in, it all imploded. And like, man, I use making an album to not only heal from that, but to launch a new life that feels beautiful, and it feels like it was all leading up to this point. It's like I died and was reborn again. And so the same way I feel about Undisputed Truth, because that was an album like that. All the Beauty in This Whole Life is an album like that. There are certain things where it's like, a lot of my life kind of came to an end, and then I started a new life. They're like certain points in my life, and they show up in my music. And so the Love and Service album for me will always be one of the most important moments of my entire life. And the fact that it's archived in this music with a person that I didn't even know going in. I never met him before. He had seen me on stage, and I had heard music that he made, and we had mutual friends, but we didn't know each other. And we made this album that is really a snapshot and a highlight. And the fact that nobody really heard it, we didn't make our money back from it yet because of the fact that we got ghosted by the distributor. There was no record label. What's it called? The press person. The publicity person was able to get us nothing. We got deeply shadow banned on social media. I couldn't get any shows during that time either. Also during that time, promoters wouldn't book me for anything. I still to this day can't get a college show, can't get a festival. Was very difficult to book anything at all. And then, I say on stage, Free Palestine from the River to the Sea during Uncle Sam Goddamn. The promoters in my biggest markets that book some of the biggest venues, festivals, events, things that I would always been included in before October 7th, those people are vocally Zionist and they don't book me anymore. And, so also during that time, I couldn't get shows. I sunk all of our money into this thing. Now, again, I know that last time I told a story like that, it sounds sad to people. And it's just like, I think it's really important to highlight how we can be doing something that's very beautiful and that we feel like is really, it's like, this is my purpose for being an artist. This is my purpose for being on this earth. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my calling. And outwardly, it doesn't work out at all. Love and Service is my least known, least streamed, least purchased album. We lost money on it. The vinyl ended up being $50 because of the fact that like everything we put into it, we manufactured 1,000 as what we thought would just be the first run. And so now I'm just kind of revealing what the budget, but I mean, we had to sell 1,000 of them at $50 just to make our money back. And I think we still have a few hundred of them left. So, for people saying like, how do we support this man? I mean, it's the vinyl is $50, $55, but it's on brotherali.com. When we sell out of them, we will have made our money back. But even that one streamed over 1 million times. Even that one has over 1 million streams. But one of the things that I came away with is like, man, it was such an affirmation for me that I am making my music for myself. I'm not making my music to even play to the listeners that I have. Like, honestly, I feel like I know what I could do. Like, it feels like, the things every time that get streamed the most are very simplistic stuff. I hate the word jazzy, but like, blues sounding, gospel sounding stuff. Me and Ant doing something with that feels hopeful and up-tempo and extremely simple. Like very simplistic. Don't put a lot into, don't style on them, don't do all of that. A sing-songy, easy to follow along with, feel good, very basic statement. Tell a story about your day. Don't say anything too challenging. It's like, man, to the built-in audience that we have, that would probably do very well. But it's, and polished, big sounding stuff, certain type of chords, certain instruments, live instruments playing along with it, so it's lush and big sounding. Have it mixed in a certain way, shiny, polished, kind of very similar to what the Satisfied Soul album ended up being. But man, that's going to do well. And so there's something beautiful about even releasing one of the most important, meaningful projects to me and it not being commercially successful at all. That like commercially it's still a failure. It's still in the hole. But like, man, we love it. And I still talk to Unjust all the time. And we've thought about and we put the videos together. Unjust put the music videos together and submitted it to film festivals, and we won some prizes. Like we won some awards at film festivals just for the dopeness of the animated videos. So we kind of thought like, oh man, maybe we'll do some events. We rent out a movie theater, show it as a film, maybe perform it and show it at the same time. So, there's still a chance that we could do something like that. But, just wanted to, after last week when I know that I shared several of those things one at a time, but when I told them all at once, it's like people got a window into the story of a chapter. And so I wanted to do that with Love and Service. I wanted to share it. If you bought this album, if you've told me that this is one of your favorite albums, you have a special place in my heart because this album does too. And this is something that wasn't viral. It wasn't known. I couldn't even get the word out on my social media, And I feel like the people that did support this album, that did know about it, were y'all. the regulars on the podcast, the people that'll show up and listen to the podcast, even when there's not a guest. And so it's just like, man, ultimately, yes, I want to make a living, and I have made a living. I want to keep the lights on, and I have. I want my family to have a decent life, and I'm so grateful that my family are not materialistic people. My wife didn't marry me because she thought she was marrying a rapper that was going to have her in designer brands. She's not into any of that, you know. And it's one of the things that I tell people, like, man, if you want to be a person of integrity, if you want to be if you want to take a principled stand in your professional life, it's best to be sharing your life with a person that's not materialistic. Because if you are, then you're going to have to make decisions. You got to bring in a certain amount of money. My wife is, she's not tripping. And I learned that, especially during this time. That in her mind, it's like, she just wants to be stable, and that's all she cares about. And I've learned that. So after years, I had years where we made a whole lot of money, and she could buy whatever she wants, and we could go wherever she wants, and we could stay wherever she wants, and we could whatever. And there are certain times, but I just know that that's not what she's about. So, there's something very empowering about, I made the exact music I wanted to make. It sounded exactly like I wanted it to sound. I said exactly what I wanted to say. The whole music industry did not participate. Social media kept my listeners from even knowing it happened. And a lot of the listeners that heard it just didn't like it. Like when when stuff started coming out on the Satisfied Soul album, I got comments like, finally, not another whack-ass lo-fi rap album. And I can't put my finger on why, but it feels racist. That sounds a bit racist. I don't know. I don't know why. But there's something where like, well, lo-fi is the essence of hip hop. So, like EPMD is not hi-fi, like polished up music. You know what I mean? It's just not like it was not the norm when, Larry Lair and Rick Rubin and them did polish up music for Def Jam. So yeah, there's something really gangster about the fact I made the exact music. I sounded like what I wanted to sound like. We spent a lot of money. We treated it important because that's what it is to us. The packaging on Love and Service is really special. I don't know if the cover alone communicates that. In fact, I know it doesn't. It's almost like we made something beautiful and then it got hidden on purpose. But we did exactly what we wanted to do, and we rocked with it. And me and BK and Unjust, we poured a lot into that album. And so it's a victory just based on that. Prince, I came across a Prince clip during the time that all that was happening, and Prince said, the music is successful the minute you finish it and you made what you wanted to make. When it goes out into the world, that's something different. That's a different thing, and trying to gauge success by that is deeply, he's like, man, real artists, we can't think like that. And that's Prince saying that. That's not the mad rapper saying that. That's not some, bitter, never made it, unsuccessful artist saying that. So much love to everybody that did rock with it. And if you didn't get a chance to check it out, go watch those videos and go listen to that album. And go to brotherali.com and you can still get one of the original versions of the vinyl in all its $50 glory, because that's how much we had to charge for it, just to break even. But yeah, I mean, people that listen to this podcast, I think we did sell 700 of them or something. That's probably y'all. Like that's me and BK and Unjust were like, yeah, that's our podcast listeners holding us down. So we love you. We appreciate you. I'm going to get back to having guests, inshallah. But it's like I was away from the podcast for so long. I just wanted to get back in the habit of doing it. We're brought to you by Zakat Foundation. They're dope. Go check them out. We got shows coming up. Go to brotherali.com. Check all that out in the events section. People hit me up sometimes for features, speaking events. You can also buy beats, but you submit. There's like a way to submit a request for all that stuff on the booking section on brotherali.com. You got to really answer the questions, because BK1 is assessing that stuff based on like, is this something really worth Ali considering? So really answer all the questions. When it says like, what are you expecting? Don't say, well, whatever you want. Like, no, you're submitting a request. So you tell us what you have envisioned, including your budget, all of it. Because I don't make decisions just based on the budget, but that's something important to know. What are you offering? Don't ask me what I charge. I don't have a running fee. Some people would be like, man, it's $1,000 for features. Hit my DM and I'll, and nothing wrong with that. I respect that. A lot of very respectful artists have done that. I remember Sean Price did that back in the day. He said, I'm going to do a verse for anybody with $1,000, and he got 50 of them. I was like, dang, that's dope. I wish I would have thought of that. But Planet Asia will do that from time to time. I mean, these are elite level, very, very scrupulous MCs. So nothing wrong with that. But I just don't have a price. I haven't done that before. Maybe I should. Maybe I should just say anybody, for 1 month, anybody with $1,000, I'll do any feature you want. But I haven't done that. So it's like, if you go to that booking section, if you want to submit a request or a proposal to do something together for a feature or something like that, make an offer. Just because there is a financial reality to it. So doesn't mean that we get offered all kind of money. We turn down a lot of money too. That's something that also should be known. People offer me money to do stuff, and a lot of times Brendan just passes on my behalf. And he has full license to do that. So in any case, I love you. Thank you for listening to me talk. And thank you for supporting everything that we do. And inshallah, we will see you next week. Just getting back in the flow, getting back in the rhythm of doing a podcast again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. See you next week, inshallah. Peace.